It took the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia just 4 months to issue an indictment against Serb leaders Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic over the massacre of Muslim men and boys in Srebrenica. Mladic filmed himself telling Muslims that they would be safely transported out of Srebrenica. He told a terrified bus of transportees that he was giving their life back to them. It was all smoke and mirrors. In fact, what happened at Potokari was that the men and boys were separated from the women, driven to a field and shot dead. The Bosniaks who had tried to seek refuge in the UN compound were summarily executed and their bodies left lying in the fields and buildings of the compound. 3 decades later, the same, if not worse, is happening in Jabalia and Beit Lahia in northern Gaza. The killing is as organised. Men are being separated from women and are being led off to an unknown fate, some never to be seen again. The streets of the camp are strewn with evidence of summary execution. Bodies of men, women and children with their heads torn off are lying in the entrances to buildings. Evacuees are given the same false promises that Mladic gave. They're promised food and water. Israeli soldiers are filmed handing out sweets to kids. Only a few streets away, bodies litter the alleyways. What is taking place before our eyes is worse than the Nakba in 1948, when 700,000 Palestinians were made refugees. Because what happened then at Deir Yassin or Tantura is happening every night in northern Gaza today. The technology of killing has changed. The intent to leave no survivors behind has not. More than 8,000 Bosnian Muslim men and boys were killed in Srebrenica. There are up to 400,000 Palestinians in northern Gaza, dozens of whom are dying every night in artillery fire, drone strikes, or close-up in summary executions. What is happening in northern Gaza today is qualitatively different to any horror visited on Gaza in the last year. This has been going on for 3 weeks and there's no international pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu to stop. There are no statements of condemnation by any Western leader. 2 cases before the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice include some of the most severe allegations of violating international law of modern times, such as genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. However, both remain stalled. 5 months have passed since Karim Khan, the ICC prosecutor, requested an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. The Hamas leaders wanted on war crime charges, Ismail Haniyeh and Yahya Sinwar, are dead, and according to Israel too, so is Mohammed Deif. That leaves only Israelis facing warrants, and yet none have been issued. The average wait for the pre-trial chamber to approve a warrant requested by the prosecutor is 2 months. But for 5 months, this court has been paralysed while war crimes are being committed daily. Far from facing an arrest warrant, Netanyahu is taking a bow to general applause. At home, Sinwar's death has been taken as vindication of his policy of defying his chief armourer, US President Joe Biden, who told him to stop the war many months ago. Amit Segal, a commentator on Israel TV's Channel 12, said that the success in killing Sinwar was due to Israel not listening to anyone for a whole year and continuing its military strategy, avoiding a ceasefire despite all international pressure. On its 11th tour of the region, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken told Netanyahu that there was a perception that a plan conceived by retired generals to force the population of northern Gaza out by starvation was being enacted. Netanyahu denied this to Blinken, but refused to issue a statement in public saying that. The killings in Gaza are happening because Netanyahu knows that Biden, 2 weeks away from a presidential election, has run out of steam to stop him. One way or another, Netanyahu is finishing the job. But what does that mean? Where does the job end? For the religious Zionists of Jewish Power Party, the end of the war is the eviction of all Palestinians and the total takeover of Gaza by settlers. To emphasize their power, a conference was held on Monday just 3 kilometers from the Gaza border, and to the sounds of shelling, a goodly number of Likud Knesset members came along too. The settlers' leader, Danielle Weiss, claimed that her organization Nahala had already entered a deal worth millions of dollars for temporary housing units as a preliminary to settlement of the Strip. You will witness how Jews go to Gaza and Arabs disappear from Gaza, Weiss said. Gatherings like these are dismissed by Israel's supporters as colourful cranks, unrepresentative of the state they still call Israel proper. The majority of Israelis reject the plan to reoccupy Gaza, they say. More telling than the presence of Israeli Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir at a conference in which Jews were dancing and celebrating Gaza's collapse were the Likud Knesset members who turned up. Netanyahu denies his plan is to empty Gaza, but his MK, Tali Gottlieb, knows her party leader better. She told Middle East Eye, "I have no doubt he is supporting the settlement of Gaza because it will bring more security, not just for around Gaza, but for Israel." Never have Israelis been so oblivious to the forces they are stirring up in the hearts of Arabs, regardless of background, clan or creed. Opinion in the two Arab countries that have signed peace treaties with Israel, Egypt and Jordan, could not be clearer. Muqtada Mansour is an Egyptian politician who called the revolution of 2011 the worst day in Egypt's history. He hates the Muslim Brotherhood and ardently supported Sisi's military coup. And yet he wrote the following about Yahya Sinwar, the Hamas leader killed by Israel. He did not flee to Paris or London, where some wealthy Arabs struggle in gambling halls and nightclubs, spending millions of dollars on their whims, while the children of the brotherly Palestinian people cannot find a drink of water. Rather, he remained in his occupied homeland resisting until he was martyred, the Egyptian wrote. Public opinion is even more fired up in Jordan, where the families of two fighters who staged a cross-border attack, injuring 2 Israeli soldiers, were mobbed by well-wishers. For the more Israel takes the lives of students like Shaban al-Dalu, burned alive in the courtyard of a hospital, or Hanan Abu Salami, the 59-year-old woman who is harvesting her olives in the West Bank, the more hundreds and thousands of Sinwars and Qassams there will be to fight back. Karadzic and Mladic are now serving life sentences in The Hague and Parkhurst. This year, the General Assembly adopted a resolution designating 11th of July, the day of the massacre in Srebrenica, as the International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of the 1995 genocide in Srebrenica, to be observed annually. I doubt whether Netanyahu and Gallant will ever be brought to justice in their lives. Maybe they'll have a few questions to answer in the next.